Welcome inside the RX Muscle Studios here in Westbury, New York for a special episode of Iron Debate. I'm your host, Sadiq Faruqi. Glad you can join us on this Tuesday evening. A lot to get to. We're going to talk Big Ramy. We're going to talk Arnold Brazil. And then, of course, the comments from Phil Heath regarding Arnold and his legs. First, we introduce our competitors for tonight, making his RX Muscle debut live from Phoenix, Arizona, the man they call the Menace, Dennis James. Dennis, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing very good, thank you, and thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. We now go to Miami, Florida, in a small bathroom in a hotel room awaits the man they call the technician, Chris Aceto. Chris, you can maybe give our viewers some perspective as to why you are crouched down in a bathroom in Miami.
Because this is the only space I have, even though George Farrah's saying it's a gay bar with a... I'm actually staying at my condo, but George is probably telling people that I'm at, like, Michigan Avenue or Loomis Park looking for dudes.
And, of course, joining me live in studio, the boss himself, DavePalumbo. Dave, you have wanted Dennis James on this show for quite some time, and now you have him here.
Yeah, it's exciting. Dennis and I always talk at all the shows, and he's always so full of opinions and strong opinions at that, and he's not afraid to say what's on his mind. And so I knew he would be perfect for Iron Debate. Obviously, he was under contract for a number of years, and we couldn't get him, and he's available now. So I think this will be a great opportunity to hear some of his opinions, and they're strong. And I'm sure we'll have a little bit of fun while we're at it.
If you have any questions, you can join us on the Muscle Central Forum on rxmuscle.com or tweet your questions using hashtag RxDebate. Let's get to our first question. And of course, it is about Big Ramy. Did he deserve to be the runaway winner at the Arnold Brazil? Was he truly better than the rest of the competition, or was he just visually bigger, and was that just too much for the judges to say no? Dennis, what say you?
Well, first of all, let me say that this was the first time where I wasn't at the Arnold. This is the third year. I've been there the first 2 years. This is the first year where I couldn't make it. I was in New Zealand celebrating my birthday, basically. So all I had was pictures to go by. I looked at pictures online, of course, and as you all know, pictures don't always do the athletes justice, and sometimes pictures make them look better than they really are. For me, from what I saw on pictures, I would say Ramy was maybe a little bigger, but he was not better. He wasn't really in better condition, I would say. He looked maybe a little more impressive from the front because he had a little more size, but I think from the back, it was still the same, I don't want to say weakness, but it's still the same parts where he has to, make the necessary improvements condition-wise. That's glutes, hamstrings. It was always his problem, and it's still his problem. There's no way he can fix that in a couple of weeks. Doesn't matter who he works with. Did he deserve to win? You can make a case for him winning, you know what I mean? Just because he outsized everybody. But when I look at Cedric, when I look at pictures of Cedric, and I saw pictures before the finals, and I was like, you know what? This is going to be Cedric's show. He will most likely win this show because I figured they're going to look at Ramy's weak parts and see if they made any improvements, which they didn't. So, and I figured that they look at Cedric and see if he's finally coming in condition, which he did. And so I thought they're going to give it to Cedric, but giving it to Ramy, they can make a case for it, and I think it's okay that Ramy won the show. If they would have gave it to Cedric, I didn't think anybody would have complained.
Chris, what about you? It's an interesting point Dennis brings up. Now, you were there. You were in Brazil. Was Ramy the clear runaway winner? And if Cedric did win, would there have been the naysayers?
I think if Cedric had won, the takeaway story would have been two things: that it was his best condition, and then Ramy was not, quote, hard enough. And then a lot of titles, a lot of opinions are formed based on results. In other words, had Cedric won, that would have been a storyline, was that he was at his best, and the other storyline would be, quote, Ramy still needs to get harder. The third storyline would have been, well, Arnold influenced it. Of course he won because it was, Cedric is Arnold's favorite. Having said that, I think you can also make the case for Rami winning for sure. He's just has a lot more muscle than he has more muscle than anyone in the IFBB. Having said that, I agree with Dennis that personally I thought his tan was better. But his condition, I think at the first and second New York Pros was, he had deeper thigh separation, better back detail, better glutes and hams than he had in Brazil.
Dennis, let me bring you back on it real quick because I just wanted to piggyback off a point that Chris was making. Was this the best? Now, you weren't there in person, but was this the best that you've seen out of Big Rami? And if not, where and when have you seen him better?
The best Rami, in my opinion, was the first New York Pro. He wasn't big. He wasn't as big as he is now, but he was way more conditioned. He had striated glutes from top to bottom. He had more separations in especially biceps, and he was just harder. He was hard, and I thought from that point on it can only get better. But and this is not a knock on Rami because Rami grows just from looking at somebody else training. So it's funny that and like I said, and I kept telling him, bigger is not always better. But it was not only up to Rami. So he was influenced from several parts, and he was sabotaged a few times. You know what I mean? So if the only way he can fix it, I think, is if he gets somebody that gets him away from basically where he's at, and lets him do what he thinks is best for him. To this point, he still doesn't have the possibility to change to do what he really likes to do because he's really being watched very closely and almost dominated, I would say.
Dave, want to jump in on this?
The best Rami for me was at the 2013 Arnold New York Pro, and then 2 days out from the Olympia, his first Olympia. That was just before he was forced to eat watermelon and grapes with every meal to carb up. He was good until then. He was so much better than the New York Pro. I guarantee you. If he would have stepped on stage the way he was before he had 20 gallons of fruit, he would have probably placed in the top 3 that year, first year.
Who's telling him to eat all this?
Not me. Somebody told him while I was not there.
So who is behind this? Who was sabotaging a Big Rami?
I have no idea.
Dave, let's get you in on this.
The world knows.
Yeah. Well,
the real gurus.
Yeah. My take on the whole thing is, I was there in person. Chris and I were watching, and Cedric was his best, despite what Pinocchio said. Cedric was his best, but Rami in person is very impressive. You look at the pictures and you can make a case for Cedric. In person, Rami is very overwhelming because of his size, and when he moves, muscles just appear that weren't there before, that you can't really capture in a two-dimensional snapshot. So Rami was super, super impressive, and I think he was the clear-cut winner. Having said that, though, my question to these guys is, since they're the gurus of the show, what could have been done better with Rami? Is Rami's diet screwed up? His advice, and is George giving him the wrong advice, or is Rami not listening to George's advice? And is Rami does Rami not have a good enough work ethic? That's what I don't know. And Dennis, you know him probably better than anyone. Chris worked with him for 4 or 5 months, but you worked with him for a couple of years. What do you think is the case when it comes to Rami?
Well, it's definitely not his work ethic. I mean, his work ethic. He likes to train. Even when you tell him, listen, it's time to take a day off. It's definitely not that he's not doing what you tell him to do. It is just that he just needs some time. I mean, he's been only training for 4 years or 4.5 years now. I mean, you can't expect a muscle to have the maturity of somebody that's been training for 10 or 15 years after this short amount of time. And he put a tremendous amount of muscle on him, just really, in just a year or two. And you can't expect that this muscle be separated and striated like a muscle that's been trained for a very long time. So that's one reason. Well, the other reason is that people just tell him. They feed him the wrong information. I'm not talking about George, because George just helped him the last couple of weeks or 2 months or something. And I don't believe that whatever he said that they followed 100%, because like I said, there's other people that tell him what to do. And and that he's going to find that out for sure. So, and like I said, unless he can do what he has to do and improve at these parts and get the maturity that the muscle needs in order to display the separation in the detail, he will just, have to wait, stand in line, and wait till he gets it done. He is the most impressive bodybuilder I've ever seen, and I've seen them all. And even after a year of working with him, and a year and a half, and I see him in the gym with train, and I'm still looking at myself and say, I can't believe what this guy's look like. And I say it again, he will, if he ever puts it together, he will be an unbeatable, totally unbeatable, dominating Mr. Olympia like there has never been one before. Ronnie Coleman was dominant, but I think Rami, if he puts it together, 95%. He will dominate. There's nobody that could stand next to him because he will make everybody look small. And that's the only thing.
Well, Chris, let's get you back in on this. Again, Dennis just laid out the fact that if he puts it all together, if Big Ramy puts it all together, he will be a dominant Mr. Olympia. What do you think he needs to do to get to that level, to be a Mr. Olympia first time ever?
Put on a guru I disagree with, for God's sake, so we can have a good show. Well, you know what? The truth of the matter is the first New York pro, Dennis. I remember at some point talking to Dennis for a second or somewhere, and that line, which is I agree with him, was repeat. He said that to me verbatim. He said, "Just give this guy time, and he's going to be more dominating than Ronnie Coleman ever was." And I was like, Jesus, God, people say the most bullshit things. That's what I thought. It was like, come on. And then he said and then he gave it the context. He's been training like 3 years. And I said, come on, he's been training 3 years. He's got been lying. He's got been training like 15 years or something. So, when you put it in that context, and you hear, the fact that, he looks at someone else and he grows, someone else train and he grows. He's the most dangerous guy out there. If any of these guys who are 1, 2, 3 say they're not afraid of him, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they're full of shit, because he's wider than everybody. He's wider than everybody with better legs. What's that mean? You know what I mean? It's one thing to have big legs and be bottom heavy, but how are you? Dave. To give it context, Dave said he's probably has the softest back lat spread in the Brazilian, Arnold, but it was the best back lat spread, more or less. You know what I mean? It was just so freaky to look at. And he looked like he could have still lost a lot from there. But, other people, if you look at them and you say, well, you still got to come down, in the back lat spread, they'd be like 19th place. You know what I mean? So it's impressive. It's unbelievably impressive to be, quote, off. Dennis, he was nowhere near ripped to the bone. He was nowhere near ripped. But I agree with Dave. I read Dave's play-by-play after the Brazil show, and I'd say, yeah, I can see it going like that. I can see Ramy winning based on, easily, based on the overwhelmingness of certain shots. The crunch shot, the side chest, those 2 shots right there, and the back lat spread. It's not like the hamstring was peeled from the side. It's not like the pecs were totally striated or even striated on the side chest, deeply striated. But there's just so much oomph to the muscle that, it makes for a super dangerous bodybuilder in the future. And I agree with, I think Dennis summarized it. When he doesn't need to nail it, actually. He just needs to be at 90% of what's considered great condition and then probably win.
Dennis, let's close this segment out with a prediction from you. Where does he finish in the 2015 Mr. Olympia, Big Ramy? And when does he hoist his first ever Mr. Olympia crown?
I don't know if he's hearing you.
Dennis, can you hear us?
Oh, that was me?
Yeah. Let's close it out with a little prediction from you. Where does Big Ramy finish in the 2015 Mr. Olympia competition? And just given his progression, when do you think he wins that first Mr. Olympia title?
Okay, well, looking at time, we are at beginning June. The show was the last week in May, or the last day of May. So we have like 15 weeks to the Olympia. If he thinks smart, I hope his camp has the brain to think that this is what we need to do, because at the point where he's at right now, this is a perfect perfect starting position to get ready for the Olympia. If he stays on track right now and goes from where he's at and dials this in the next 15 weeks, he can be very, very good, which means he can be 5 to 10% better than he was at the Arnold. And if that happens, then I just hope that nobody is off in the top 5, because whoever's off will be behind him. I believe if he comes in better than the Arnold, they said he was 315, we know who said it, so I believe he was probably 290. So if he comes in the 280s or 270s, high 270s, really, really ripped in the glutes and the hamstrings, then I think it's really, really close for him to be in the top 3.
And when do you predict that he will, given his progression, win his first Mr. Olympia title?
Whenever he dials us in 100%.
Okay.
That can be this year, that could be next year, it might never happen. We don't know. But if he comes in close to 100%, then I think that will be the year. A lot of people say, well, if you don't speak English, you can't be Mr. Olympia, and this blah, 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 blah. I believe his English has got so much better.
Yeah.
And I think the DJ Express course helped him very much. Because I refused to learn Arabic, so you got to learn English, and he did. And I told him from the beginning. It's the same I told Dennis Wolf years ago. I said, number one, you got to speak the language. You got to be able, and that's not because you can't be the champion if you don't speak English. This is because you make way more money if you're able to communicate. You can do seminars, you can do so many things that you can't do unless you speak. So, and he took that to heart. So, and he's learning. So, he will be Mr. Olympia if he puts it together, with the English or without the English. I believe it.
Let's go to our second topic, and there are many ways we can go with this one. And of course, we are talking about Guru Wars, the video that aired last week, about 8 days ago, and is already up to about 17,000 views on YouTube. It has been the buzz of the bodybuilding world. And for those who haven't seen it yet, Chris Aceto and George Farah square off in an airport lounge in Rio de Janeiro, and you have to go watch it. Go check rxmuscle.com, our YouTube channel, and see the video that everybody's talking about. Now, the topic that we want to bring up, and Dennis, we're going to start with you on this one, because this is a point that Chris Aceto brought up last week on Heavy Muscle TV, and really what was a focal point of the argument, that he believes that George Farah hustles athletes backstage when they're at their most vulnerable point. They're in the pump-up room, they're ready to go on stage, all sorts of thoughts are going through their heads. Should that be a no-fly zone? Should no one have access to that area where the athletes are warming up to go on stage?
Well, I mean, I don't want to say you shouldn't be able to have access backstage. I mean, it's good for the athletes if the coaches have access, because not everybody has the nerves and is in their right mind. So some people, they really, really need somebody they can talk to backstage. So I don't think that they need to, exclude the trainers or whoever is close to them. But I think there should be a code. And the code means you do not ask people to come work with you if they have a different coach. Now, I watched I listened to the other radio show, and they had George Farah online yesterday, I guess. I just watched it today just to hear what he had to say. And they talked about that, and he's like, he never asked anybody to come work with him. That's what he says. He never asked anybody to come work with him. Only if somebody calls him or contacts him and says, listen, I work with this guy and this guy, I'm not happy. What am I supposed to say? And there he's absolutely right. If somebody contacts you and asks you to work with you because he's not happy with his coach, I have the right to say yes or no. But don't say you never ask people, because he asks people all the time. I remember he asked me. He came to me, and I can tell you his exact words. Yo, if you would work with me, you would win every show. So George, listen to me. Man, I kind of like you on one side and I can't stand you on the other, but don't go back saying that's not true, because you know better than that.
Chris, you want to jump in?
I didn't know DJ was going to be my star witness.
That was years ago, but I know that's what he does. You know what I mean? And that's just maybe not so much because he's trying to take the money away from people, because most of the people he worked with for free anyways. He doesn't even charge them just so they come. Yeah. But, that's just what he does, and he has to, sometimes you got to man up and, And we should have a code. We should say, listen, you don't do that. If somebody comes to you, it's okay. If they don't come to you, don't walk up to them and tell them, if you would work with me, you would be better.
Dennis,
even if it's true.
Dennis, did you actually watch the video that we're talking about between George Farrow and Chris Aceto?
Absolutely.
What did you make of it?
Well, it wasn't really. I didn't really see any. There wasn't really. You said it was 17,000 hits.
Yeah.
I think if somebody would have balled up the fist, it would have been 70,000 at least. It's in Brazil. You guys could have went at it. Nobody could say shit.
Now, have you ever had any similar run-ins, arguments like that with either George or any other coach?
Is that a question now?
Sorry?
Is that a question? Or are you just trying to... Because everybody knows I did. Why are you asking me that question? Huh? You trying to stir up something? Yes. Me and George, we had a little... what you want to call it? It wasn't a little... Yeah, it was a little... It was a little get-together. Let's put it this way. And the bad part about it that makes me feel a little bad, it was in the middle of the Hilton Millennium in the lobby, full house. Everybody was sitting there. It's just that, when I'm at a point where I'm done with bullshit, then I just forget who's around, and I'll just got to address the issue, And thank God that it didn't escalate it too far.
Well, Dennis, of course, one of the lines that was uttered during that video in the exchange between George and Chris, well, Chris is asking George if he was a cop. George was asking Chris if he was gay. Now, we're getting questions on the Muscle Central forum on rxmuscle.com, and one of our viewers asks, what if he had called you gay in that kind of a dispute?
If he would have called me gay, or if he would have asked me?
Or asked you if you were gay?
Well, I would have showed him how deep love can get. He would have walked out of that place butt naked. That's all I can say to this. So, I don't think. I mean, if you ask another man if he's gay, I think that's fighting words right there. I mean, that's you get to that point. If you ask somebody if he's a cop, that's a different thing because he said he was a cop.
No.
That's a real not good question because you said so. If I come out the closet, I would come out of the closet and say, hey, I'm gay. Then you have the right to ask me, are you really gay? Because I said so, But if a man doesn't say gay, I mean that's like that's hard, man. It would have been on like popcorn in there. I swear to God, you all had cameras everywhere for that.
Chris.
DJ, you missed the context. The idea of asking if he was a cop is what you don't see in the video is he wants to apologize. He wants to like chum me up and say we're best buddies, just like me and DJ are best buddies. And
yeah, but I thought you guys are best buddies now because at the interview yesterday he said, and he said, Chris, you called him and apologized.
I did not call him, nor did I apologize. I think I gave him a pat on the back.
Misunderstood, but I was listening to the video and he said something about called him the next day and apologized, so it's all good. You guys are basically friends again.
It's important to note the reason why I brought up the idea if he was a cop or not is because I'm learning now that he's tried to hustle you up as a client backstage. And he would probably probably would not tell the truth about that. So when I asked him about him hustling him up, everyone except one of my clients, it's fine for him to do it. But to say, no, I didn't do that, and then confront him about it, the only way I have to neutralize that is to say, okay, are you a cop or not? Because on tape, that's the only concrete thing that we have that is like the star evidence that refutes the idea that you struggle with embellishing or telling the truth. And in terms of asking me if I was gay or not, I wanted to bring in two of his top clients. I mean, talk about, we know who he works with is Innuendo, right?
I didn't understand what you just said. What was that? I didn't really understand
Chris,
what you said.
Hear you.
The voice it's not loud enough.
The irony of in terms of him asking me if I was gay or not is he works with a couple people who there's always innuendo, right? I mean, I could have brought up their names, and I didn't want to go sidetrack and start talking about them. You know who they are, right?
I think I have an idea.
Okay, so instead I took the low road and dragged Biggie Smalls into it because he was right there.
All right, Dave, let's bring you in on this. Again, this is about the Guru Wars video, the Guru Wars argument in Brazil. And the question that we picked from that is whether or not backstage is a no-fly zone. Should coaches be, and again, it's simple etiquette, but really, what is your thoughts on a coach recruiting an athlete right before they're about to go on stage?
Well, but we all know that bodybuilders are probably the most insecure bunch of people. That's why they need coaches to begin with a lot of times. And you're probably your most vulnerable psychologically right before you go on stage because even Mr. Olympia wants to hear that he looks great, from someone. So to have someone like George go backstage and say, hey, you know what? I can make you look the best and you'll win the show is basically him telling them they look like shit. This is how they're interpreting it in their mind. I look like shit and my coach doesn't know what they're doing. Now, that's great psychological warfare for George because now these guys, if they don't do well, they're going to call him up and say, well, what could you do for me? Because that's just the mentality of the bodybuilder, or at least some of them will. So if that's his intention backstage, and I know he lies about it and says he never does it, but we all have seen him do it. Triple H, for God's sakes, told me in person, and I know he has no reason to lie, George tried to hustle him up at the Arnold Classic, and tell him, I'm going to make you look like The Rock. And he knows that he works with me. So we know George does this. He should be banned from the backstage area, George. Or he should be told that if he talks to other athletes that are not his, he's going to be removed. No one should be doing that backstage. As an athlete myself, I wouldn't even want to even talk to George or hear what he has to say. I don't want to hear his underhanded comments, his snide remarks, his cheap shots at who's ever working with the person at the time. That shouldn't be allowed, okay? You can't have, perverted, pedophilic photographers backstage taking inappropriate pictures of the guys. Why should you have someone playing, mind games with the bodybuilders? It's just as detrimental to the bodybuilding's well-being. So as far as I'm concerned, that should be the law laid down at the competitors' meetings. If you want your coach backstage, the only person your coach can talk to is you. If they talk to anyone else, we're removing them. And that's the end of the story.
We are going to step aside. When we come back, a lot more on Iron Debate. We're going to break down Phil Heath's comment about Arnold himself in an interview yesterday, as well as Dennis, Chris, and Dave's thoughts on some of the best bodybuilders of all time. Iron Debate, we'll be back.
I'm Seth Johns, I'm on the ASA national team, and I snowboard hard every day. For complete joint health, I take Arthrolyze Elite. Species Nutrition, what species are you?
At booth 753 and 755, New arrivals, new lady styles, exclusive Mr. Olympia discount. Meet Big Ramy and Dennis James at booth 753 and 755. Gorilla Wear, official sponsor of Mr. Olympia.
Back inside the RX Muscle Studios in Westbury, New York, Iron Debate with Dennis James, Chris Aceto, and DavePalumbo. We now move on to our third topic, and that is a topic about bodybuilders today. We always talk about the classic generation. We always talk about the training techniques used by athletes past. Today's bodybuilder, do they train as hard? There's been a rap on bodybuilders of today, maybe not training as hard. And the word lazy has also been thrown into the equation. Dennis, we start with you. Today's bodybuilder, is training as important as it used to be?
I think absolutely training is important. You can tell the difference between, when you look at the guys back in the days that trained just more. I mean, nowadays people just train, it looks to me like they train a little bit less. You know, we used to be in the gym. I remember when I started, I was in the gym all day. I went to the gym in the morning to do cardio. I went home to have breakfast, went back to the gym to train, you know, and come back in the evening to train and add some more cardio after that. So it was all about training, you know. Nowadays you see that people just, I don't know. I mean, it just doesn't look, I mean, not all of them. This is just, you know, there might be a few. It just doesn't look like they're intense enough or they take it too serious, you know.
Now, what do you put that on? Is there a lack of pedigree? Is there laziness, or is that a calculated approach to today's training methods?
I think some of the guys are just scared of pain and fatigue. I think they're just scared that this shit might hurt. You know what I mean? It's just that, you know, you can't rely on your genetics only. You know, your genetics can take you only so far, but you never know if you fulfilled your potential unless you gave it 100% also in the gym. So I believe that there is still a few guys old school enough to do what they have to do in the gym and get the job done. And some of them, you know, they cut their training a few sets short because they believe they did enough.
Chris, your thoughts?
I agree with DJ. The key word is fear. You know, I think people are afraid of training hard. I think people don't want to train with free weights. I just, you know, I don't want to knock the current crop of bodybuilders, but, you know, a lot of people use machines which feel, you know, you might get a good pump, or, you know, I feel it directly on the pecs. Well, you know what, there's a difference between, you know, shoulder presses on a machine and saying, you hand me the 140s and you hand me the 140s on the dumbbell shoulder press. I'm going to knock those out. It's hard to get them up. It's hard to stabilize them. But you know what? Stabilizing them adds something to your physique. I think. I can't prove it, but I just think that, you know, there's so much emphasis on machines and the pump, and you know, just people aren't, you know, just nobody ever. Not that I'm a training guru by any stretch of the imagination. Nobody asked me a question ever about training. Should I do 10 reps, 5 reps, 8 reps, heavy, light, you know, higher, you know, drop sets, no sets, 3 days rest, 2 days rest? You know, people don't ask me. So if they don't ask me, it's not on their radar screen. And, you know, DJ will tell you, or Dave will tell you, anyone older than 45, although DJ's still like 40, I guess, looks 40, is, you know, when you wanted to build legs when you first started, you would find out how to do the legs. You know what I mean? You would just ask people how to do legs, and if you didn't know, you do everything just in case. You know, you do front squats, hack squats, back squats, leg press. You know, I remember when Jay was young once, I asked him, I remember, what you do for back? He said, well, I didn't know what to do, so I did everything. You know, and he didn't do everything with, you know, he didn't do the one-arm dumbbell rows with 40 pounds and said, I did everything. Everything was done hard and heavy. So I think that is somewhat playing a role. It's somewhat of a reflection in the physiques that you see these days. And, you know, I'm not a fan of Branch Warren's physique, but yeah, I will be the first one to say it looks pretty damn dense. You know what I mean? And I don't think he does cable leg presses for exercises. You know what I mean? Or, I mean, there's people that their physiques scream of density, and we know that they've been training for a long time, which is an advantage. But they've been training heavy and hard. So, you know, I don't know why people have gotten so far away from the basics of heavy to failure training with barbells and dumbbells. I'll leave it at this. I always kid with Dusty Henshaw. I say, Dusty, if you want to get big, you can do it with the bar. You can do bench press, incline bench press. You can do shoulder press, upright rows, bent over rows. You can hook the bar up on the corner and do like a T-bar row. You can do deadlifts. You can do squats, front squats. You can do a lot with just a bar.
Dave, let's get you in on this. Your thoughts on the philosophy, the mentality of bodybuilders and their training regimens today.
Well, people today, and let's just call it like it is, they're lazy. They think it's all drugs. A lot of the top body, but not everyone. I'm not including everyone, so don't. I don't want to start getting emails and texts from people saying I train hard. There's guys that train hard, but most of the guys think take more drugs, train less, hammer strength, you know, machine squeezing. They watch Charles Glass out in Venice, you know, training guys like Rodin and all these guys, and they're doing these, you know, hack squats, you know, facing the side direction, doing these like weird angled stuff, and they think, well, that's how you get big, and that's not how you get big. That's not how you, those guys are big already. And you know what? Those guys should probably be training harder too. I don't believe in all that stuff. I think that, you know, when I was training back in the day, I had a lot of dense muscle, and that was all from heavy free weight movements, squatting, deadlifting, you know, bench pressing, you know, bent over rows, shoulder pressing. I don't think I've ever seen anyone in the last 5 years do a behind the neck shoulder press. I just don't see it anymore. Everyone says, oh, it's going to injure me. Oh, it's no good for my shoulders. Yeah, it might be, but it builds pretty fucking big, dense shoulders. Ask DJ. Guaranteed he'd shoulder press plenty of weight overhead. And, you know, it just goes, it's kind of nauseating when I see these guys, you know, whining about the fact that they can't grow and they put 3 pounds on a year. I put 10 to 15 pounds on a year back in the day when I was coming up. So, you know, it's a little disheartening. You know, when I have to call up pros and ask them, hey, you want to be in the Bros versus Pros Strength Challenge? They're like, yeah, but what do I got to lift? I said, well, we're deadlifting and we're bench pressing for reps. They're like, nah, I don't really bench press and I don't deadlift. I'm like, you're pros. You don't deadlift and bench press? I mean, it really, this world has gotten, I hate to use this term, it's not, I don't really like it, but they're pussy down. I got news for you. The women train way harder than the men. And you know what? It just goes to show there's some women with some pretty good density out there. I guarantee you, if Dennis, Chris, and I held a training camp and we trained some of the top bodybuilders out there with great genetics that haven't really, you know, I guess you can say embraced their potential. If we spent, 16 weeks with those guys, they would probably put 10 pounds of muscle on each just from training more intensely. Now, I don't know how this whole thing, progressed like this, but the bottom line is that the bodybuilders today just don't train as hard. And, I don't know why it happened. If we're just a lazier society, more people are interested in taking videos of themselves and putting them on Facebook than they are actually getting, all sweaty and I guess hurt in the gym, so to speak.
Dennis, we're actually getting a question right now from a viewer about Lionel Baeki. Why is he always soft? Do you classify him as Dave said it, lazy?
Well, let me be honest. Since everybody expects me to tell the truth, you know what I mean? That's why my nose is so short. Lionel is, for me, and that's the only reason why I took him on. He was, for me, a guy with unbelievable potential, with the body that if he can nail it, he could also win every show. So remember Tampa 2 years ago, I think it was. It was like 2 weeks out, 1 week out from Dallas. I was in Tampa, and after the show, he came to me and was like, "Listen, could you help me?" I said, what do you need help for? He said, yeah, I need for Dallas next week. I was like, how am I going to help you in 1 week from here to Dallas? I said, where are you staying? He says, I'm at the hotel. I said, food? And I said, there's no way I can help you. I said, I'm in Phoenix, you're in Dallas. I said, there's only one possible chance that I can help you. I said, buy a ticket now, come with me to Phoenix, stay with me in Phoenix, and me fly back to Dallas together. And that's what he did. And I changed him in 1 week basically because I made him do the cardio. I gave him basically no food, you know what I mean, but protein, and I made him train. And then in the gym, it's always, when people come in to train, they always act, yeah, I train hard, until they come to the gym, and then I get to them, and then they be like, well, I didn't think I trained that hard. I was like, what are you talking about? This is the way you should train, you know? So they basically all, Lionel is, and he's going to tell you he does everything he is exactly what Dave just explained. I mean, and I saw it firsthand. I had him here at two different times to train, and I had to go in the gym. I had to, come on, let's go. I mean, he's dragging in between sets. He's got to sit down and rest for I don't know how long. It's just, that's why this man is not making it, okay? I tried everything, and then I got him somewhat in decent shape one single time. That was the Arnold Classic last year, where I thought he should have won, but he didn't. And he is a guy that, I'm going to tell you, and he's going to say I'm a liar, but I don't care. Because, if you know, and this is exactly what Haney told me. He said, you tell him eat 1 cup of rice, he'll eat 10. You know? And it's just what it is. He just listens to people like they say, oh, unbelievable potential, the best genetics. And he thinks that's enough. And you see where it takes him. It's not going to take him nowhere. I basically had to fucking let him go 3 weeks out from the Arnold this year because he wouldn't even get in touch with me. You know, not even on the other side. There's other things that, you know, we agreed on 2 years ago and it hasn't happened until this day. So that's one reason. But the main reason is that you don't get no pictures no more. You don't get nothing. But then when you get pictures, you look at the pictures and you want to cry. You know what I mean? You just want to say why. You know what I mean? And then I was like, then I don't hear from him. And then all of a sudden, like a week out, he contacts me again and he says, you know, I said, where are you? I was like, oh, I had to go somewhere. I will explain to you. You know what? I said, you know what? I'm done. You know what I mean? You want to see me? You come see me at the hotel. And he expects me to travel through the snow somewhere to go see him. So it's a potential that's wasted. It's not coming anywhere. It's too late for him. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't believe he will ever make it. I don't care what he posts on Instagram, this is never give up, never give up. Keep on not giving up. As long as you do the right thing, you will stay where you're at. It's not going to go anywhere.
DJ more brash than me.
Huh?
I will say, DJ, that 2 things. That Arnold Brazil, he was spectacular. Because I was helping John Del Rosa, and I told John, of course, you're going to be hard to beat, you're going to be hard to beat, you're going to be hard to beat, you're going to be hard to beat. And then when Baiki came on stage, I said, that's good enough to be beaten. And that was John's best, you know what I mean? Baiki he was like very close to 1,000% on the money. Speaking of, De La Rosa wants to call in. He's texting me now. Do you want me to put him on the show, Dave, live here, hear what he has to say, or?
How are you going to put him on? Through your
speakerphone.
You're going to put him on like a holograph in the bathroom there with you?
We'll call him later.
All right, so let's go on to our next one, and this is a good segue. And again, you're watching Iron Debate on RxMuscle.com, brought to you by Species Nutrition and Quest Nutrition. Who are the top 5 hardest working bodybuilders of all time? Now, this could be from this era, could be from the classic golden era of bodybuilding, could be from your competition days. Chris, we'll start with you on this one. From what you have seen, observed, now, back then, your hardest working bodybuilders of all time.
That I see, that I saw, I don't see a lot of people, as many people as DJ, you know. I can tell you who trained that I visibly saw really hard. I saw way back, people probably don't know the name, Jeff King really opened my eyes. I saw John Natashak train really hard, really, really hard. He was surprising, you know what I mean? You'd think 176, he's 183, whatever he weighed, you know, how hard can he train? He must have had a toothpick body under there because he put on a lot of muscle in that frame, and he did it through training, 100%. Of course, Mike Francois, there's 3. You know, I've seen Coleman train before, only on video. You got to list him up there. And then fifth would be, criticism. People would probably laugh and say, no, he didn't train hard. But you have to put Jay up there because you can't build that amount of muscle, because he didn't do like Coleman, do front squats with 900 pounds and do, bent over rows with the 400-pound dumbbells. People might not think it was hard training, but it was hard because it was still pretty darn heavy, but very fast and very volume. It's the opposite of Lionel Baiki, where, DJ says he sits down for 5 minutes in between sets. Jay would probably make a lot of people barf just because their lactic acid threshold couldn't handle it, and they would just they would barf.
Dennis, let's go to you, Dennis. If you had to pick 5, you want to go 3, maybe less, whatever, more. Hardest working bodybuilders, in your opinion?
Well, from this era, definitely Branch. I would say, I would think hardest working. Who was hard working? I was disappointed with almost all of them, to be honest. Back in the days, I would probably say Rich Gaspari.
Yeah. Left that out.
Hard working. Hard working doesn't have to mean that he is the strongest or
just someone who's an animal in the gym, in your eyes.
I've probably seen more amateurs working hard than pros, to be honest. I've seen more amateurs with no money, no supplements, train like it's the last day. So, but looking at the guys right now, hard working. I mean, everybody thinks they work hard, but when I think about hard working, who comes to mind is like Branch. Johnny is the hard worker in the gym. He does the thing because he trains with Branch, and when they train together, they just go at it. I mean, they do things that others won't do. You know what I mean? Is it all good for you? I doubt it, but that's the way they do it, and that's the way they're used to doing it, and that's why I have to respect that. But if I have to think about somebody else right now, I'm sure there's about 2-3 more, but I can't think of anybody right now. I just know too many people. Yeah, I believe Jose Raymond is a hard worker too.
Good one. Dave, what about you? In your experience as an athlete, as a coach, as an observer of the sport?
One more before I forget. One more. I give him one of the hardest working guys too, and makes improvements at the same time.
Okay, Dave.
I have a top 5. And, one of the people I left off my top 5 list is Arnold, because I never saw Arnold train in person, but I heard he used to train pretty hard. So he might be on that list somewhere. But my top 5 list is, first of all, Rich Gaspari. When Dennis said it, I was actually writing it on the paper. He's got to be number 5 in my list. He trained with a ferocity. I remember watching some of his training videos back in the day. This guy trained like his life depended on it. So I got to have him in my top 5. Fourth is got to be Branch Warren, because I watched him in person, and you know what? It's downright scary to watch him train. And the sweat and he trains in that Metroflex gym. It's 1,000 degrees in there. It's dirty, dusty. I got to give Branch Warren top 4. Third, I have Ronnie Coleman. He's unbelievable. I mean, he was the hardest training and probably the strongest of anyone out there. But I don't have him at number 1. I'll tell you why. Because number 2 is Dorian Yates. And while he didn't do a lot of volume, the intensity that he generated during the few sets that he did was scary. I remember seeing him at Bev Francis Powerhouse Gym doing a back workout. He probably did like 4 or 5 sets total, but I could tell that it was amazing that the muscles weren't tearing off the attachments. He was so intense. And I think the number 1 hardest working people, not necessarily the most productive, but the hardest working guys in the gym, it's a tie between John Defendis and Steve Mahalik, and they used to train together. Their training techniques were called intensity or insanity, and they would train for hours and hours and hours, hundreds of sets. I don't think anyone can keep up with those guys.
Dennis, let's go to the next segment of this question. Now, we talked about the 5 hardest training bodybuilders. What about the top 5 bodybuilders, in your opinion?
My top 5? All-time top 5?
In your observation of the sport, in your time as an athlete, as a coach?
I can only talk the time that I even know what bodybuilding is. I would say, definitely, for me, one of the top 5, one of the 5 top guys that was dominating the sport at his time was Haney. Of course, Ronnie Coleman. Gotta be careful because I don't want to hurt nobody's feelings. You know how bodybuilders are. Man, when you go, I won this, so man, why didn't you mention me? I got this so many times when I do predictions. They call me, it's like, why didn't you put me in there? We have Lee, Ronnie. I mean, one of my idols, I got to say, who was also a hard-working guy, and I forgot to mention him earlier, was Kevin Lerone. Kevin Lerone at his all-time best was one of the best bodybuilders ever. So was Flex Wheeler.
Yeah.
You know, in the early 90s, I have to say. But if you look at the people today, I got to give, you know, I've been big props to Jay. And I guess that's top 5 right there for me.
Chris, what about you? Your top 5 bodybuilders of all time?
Really hard to, you know, I'm gonna take the conservative route and stick with the Mr. Olympias because there's something about winning Mr. Olympia. But I agree, Haney, Dorian. I don't want to even leave, you know. Fuck. The guy came from a bantamweight. How do you leave Dexter off the list? I mean, he did something right. You know, he came from 110 to, you know, 235. You know, Phil Heath, dude, I mean, the guy, you know, as much as I want to, like, knock him because I help someone or some guys who, I'm still looking for a knock against him. I wish someone could rehash, like, Width so I could jump on the bandwagon, but then I look at him in the prejudge and I said, it didn't bother me one bit. I mean, Phil Heath's pretty freaky, you know. Kai Green has strung together some crazy looks here and there, you know what I mean? Like some freaky, usually it's in photos, 2 days after the show or 3 weeks out from the show. It's just really hard for me to, you know, it's hard because you're going to leave people. It's like the Hall of Fame. You're going to leave people off the list. You know, I can't stand Sean Ray, but I saw pictures of him recently from 1994. I was at that show, the Olympia. He looked freaky. I agree with DJ. You know, Kevin Levrone. I saw him win the New York Pro or Night of the Champions the first year out. I remember it to this day. I know what he posed to. He was so freaky. I know the crowd's reaction when he first came out. I know his reaction when he first came out. That was like one of the best looks that I've ever seen anyone ever. So my tongue is tied because I can't figure out, you know, it's hard for me to make a top 10 list, but I'll listen to see what Dave has to say.
Dave, want to jump in?
Sure. I have number 6, Kai Green. I think he's the sixth best bodybuilder of all time. I have Kevin Levrone right ahead of him at 5. Lee Haney at 4. And I think Lee Haney for his time was way ahead of his time, but I think the guys just got better after Haney retired. I have Flex Wheeler at number 3. Dorian Yates at number 2. And Ronnie Coleman is the greatest of all time. I don't think there's any disputing that.
So let's go to the next part of this. I'm going to go around the horn. Each of you are going to name the best bodybuilder to never win a Mr. Olympia title. Chris, you first.
Best bodybuilder to never win a Mr. Olympia title. At this moment, really, for me, it's probably currently Kai Green. I mean, and the reason I say that, you know, I might be wrong, but Dave just put him on number 6 as the top 6 freakiest bodybuilders. You know, he has the capacity to win that show handily. As great as Phil is, but he's just have issues at that show nailing what he needs to nail to make people step up after prejudge and say, DJ, who'd you have? He said, I had Kai. Dave, who'd you have? Kai. Chris, who'd you have? Kai. You know, there's always something like flat, or water, a flat, a little bit, you know, and he's freaky. And for some, you know, at this point, it's like, and I think, you know what, maybe backing me up on that point is the fact that his level of frustration having not won it, because he knows he can win it, right? He knows he's physically good enough to win that show. And yet, I haven't had him winning it yet.
Dave, let's get your thought on the best bodybuilder of all time, in your opinion, to never win a Mr. Olympia title.
It's easy. Flex Wheeler. I had him third on my list of the best bodybuilders of all time. He came around at a time where there just were great bodybuilders. He was beat by Dorian for a couple of years. He was beat by Ronnie a few times. And, I mean, it was just bad luck that those – I mean, Ronnie and Dorian might be, two of the greatest bodybuilders of all time. So, Flex Wheeler just, when he didn't show up at his best at the right times. And I think that if he was around today competing, he would be Mr. Olympia for 10 years. So he's definitely the greatest bodybuilder to never win the Olympia.
Dennis, your opinion, the best bodybuilder to never win a Mr. Olympia title?
Well, since Dave just went with Flex, then I'm going to go with Kevin. You got to go with Kevin. Kevin was 2 or 3 times second at the Olympia, where potentially he could have won maybe one of them. But also, and on the other hand, if it's not Kevin, then also Sean Ray. Sean Ray, I thought 94, he won the Olympia.
Now to our final subject of the episode, and again, if you want to jump in with any questions for Dennis, for Dave, for Chris, you can tweet using hashtag RxDebate. You can chime in on the live chat box on livestream.com or join us on the Muscle Central forum on rxmuscle.com. If you're not already a member, it is free to register. So, a couple of days ago, Phil Heath had an interview with NPC News Online in which he responded to Arnold and his comments that were made the day after the Arnold Sports Festival, and in particular, the judging criteria for today's bodybuilders, and really, what his thoughts were on that. Also, whether or not he would compete at the Arnold. So there was a little wishy-washy response regarding that. And then today, more statements come out regarding what Phil Heath had to say about Arnold's legs. Dennis, make some sense of this. What did you make of Phil Heath's comments regarding Arnold and his statements?
Well, okay. I just saw the interview before the show, and it looks to me that Phil is he doesn't really want to go too deep into what Arnold said and about his comment about the guts, which this it should have been addressed, and haven't been addressed for quite some time now. It's just that there's always 1 or 2 guys that and I speak from experience when it comes to that. They just they just slide in there somehow and still place, and you can't just how can I say it? I don't want to say anything wrong. You can't just mark somebody down for just having a little bit of suspension, and you can, but you sometimes can't because some people know how to control it. Some people, they're totally out of control, and I think that's something you should mark down. But the way Phil put it, I would say is, and of course, he kind of mentioned that this doesn't apply to him. But I hope he really means what he says, because last year at the Olympia, I was looking at him and I saw a little bit of the stench of myself. So
interestingly enough, we actually just got a question on our Twitter feed. I want to give him credit, Nathaniel Rittner, about your thoughts on the distended stomachs, because that was a hot topic coming out of Columbus a couple of months ago. What do you make of that right now in today's bodybuilding world?
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
Okay. Well, I to be honest, I didn't really see the show.
No. But in general, that seems to be a topic of conversation now. The Arnold is seemingly spearheaded that conversation.
It's been a conversation for 10 years. It's not happened. This didn't happen at the Arnold this time. It just happened that Arnold said something for the first time. That's why everybody focuses on the Arnold, because it is one picture that's going around with Rulli, and other than that, I didn't see anything else. So, but this issue has been addressed for many years. We'll talk about it, because I was one of them that had the problem too. So it's nothing new. It's been out there for quite some time. But like I said, Arnold officially went out and said something about it. Now everybody's talking about it. So I mean, Arnold just probably I don't know who he was talking about when he mentioned it. I'm not sure, what person or what athlete he was, singling out when it came to that. Because when I look at the top three, I didn't really see any distinction there, or even the top four. The Cedric didn't have any. Who got fifth? I don't remember who got fifth. So in the top five, I didn't see anything, and I only saw the first call out. So I mean, I'm not sure what exactly that's supposed to change, because when you look at the top guys, I don't really see any distinction there, to be honest.
Well, Dennis, one of the athletes that Arnold did mention was Cedric coming in fourth, and that was something that he said, quote, was pissed about. What did you make of Cedric coming in fourth at that show?
Well, Cedric, in my eyes, has probably the best physique out there right now. When you look at the proportions, the aesthetic, the height, the width, and if you look at everything, Cedric comes to mind as the perfect physique in my eyes. Now, Cedric has an issue, with his track record, coming in condition. And that's not a knock on Chris, because Chris, I know exactly how you feel. You know what I mean? I think it has something to do with Cedric's nerve. But Cedric placing fourth is, I probably would have him a place higher. You know what I mean? But I don't think if there's a reason for anybody to be pissed that Cedric didn't come any higher, because, like I said, if Cedric would have been a little bit drier, it would have been a totally different ball game. I think they're just looking at Cedric and they want to see him finally nail it and in order to be rewarded, and therefore, he placed fourth. I mean, I probably had him third. You know what I mean? Because I thought that was the best Branch I've ever seen on any show.
Chris, let's get you in on this. What did you make of Phil coming out yesterday and having a strong response to Arnold, and then coming out again and talking about his legs?
Phil has earned the right to say whatever he wants, because he's a Mr. Olympia title holder, and he has the right to his opinion, and he has the right to be wrong. I'm not saying he was wrong, because when you win the Mr. Olympia, has he won it 4 times, or is it 3?
4.
4 times, man. Say what you want. You know what I mean? You've earned it. It's kind of ballsy. But I watched it too, and he's talking about like the 7th, 8th, 9th guy. I think Arnold wasn't talking about the guys who got 9th, 10th, and 11th in his show. He was talking about Coke bottle physiques and guts. People leave out the idea of a Coke bottle physique, meaning lack of V-taper. I personally think he was talking about Branch not having a good V-taper. I personally thought he articulated Cedric by name as a person to battle out against Dexter, multi-Arnold Classic champion. We all know Compton had a gut issue in the show. Maybe he was talking about Compton. He didn't have it in Australia. I was in Australia. It was gone. I was shocked. I was waiting for I thought he looked outstanding in Australia. And so, I think Arnold was talking without naming names about possibly, this is my opinion, Compton, who's a great bodybuilder, looked totally different, I thought, in Australia. I could have given the nod in Australia. And Branch was Branch, you know what I mean, who hasn't had a fabulous V-taper in years, but, we put him on the list of hardest trainers, so he's got to have, he has muscle density, which, doesn't show up in pictures, but shows up on stage. That's where he gets a lot of the knock from. So, I was just confused. I was just surprised that Phil was playing it like Arnold was discouraged about the guys who were getting like 7th, 8th, and 9th. He was explicitly talking, really, I thought, about who placed or who did not place in that top 5 or 4 or 3 or 2, and how they placed. The idea, I didn't hear about him, this is news to me, about picking on Arnold's legs. Well, Arnold didn't have glutes, neither did Haney have glutes. You know what I mean? And it's a different era. I mean, Arnold if DJ will tell you, anyone over 45 will tell you, you look at a black and white photo of Arnold from 1973, all the way up until when Haney was winning, it was just mesmerizing. The muscularity, the detail, the separation. It's a different era.
Dave, let's get you in on this. Your thoughts on Phil coming out and having a strong response to Arnold in a video on NPC News Online yesterday.
Well, I thought the argument he made, which was, if Arnold doesn't want, big guts, why is he inviting these guys to his show? Because the Arnold Classic is an invitation-only event, whereas the Mr. Olympia is a, I guess, qualifier event. We have to qualify for that by winning a show. So I didn't think that was a really good argument, really, on Phil's behalf, because, the Arnold people just invite the top guys in the world. If the guys show up with a distended stomach, for whatever reason, they ate too many carbs, they didn't take a crap the night before, whatever whatever the reason may be, that's not Arnold's fault. But Arnold was just saying it shouldn't be rewarded. It should be marked down. Now, just like DJ said, when I was competing, I was a really big bodybuilder, and I had stomach issues as well, and I had to be very cautious because they would mark me down for that. So I remember back in, I think it was the Dorian era almost, they were giving these calls to arms about marking down the guts, and they said they were going to penalize for that, and they did. And I think guys really improved the midsection. Nowadays, maybe it gets a little out of hand sometimes. I think the problem with the Arnold was, and we've talked about this ad infinitum, was that there really wasn't any clear-cut winner. They went with Dexter. He's the feel-good winner. He always brings good conditioning, nice polishing. A lot of people would have liked to seen Cedric place higher, maybe even win the event because of his structure. But like DJ said, Cedric was a little off at that show. I probably would have had Cedric second there. I think that Branch, while being thick and dense and maybe, bringing back a lot of that muscle that he had lost with the quad tear, he still wasn't that detailed, and I think that was the problem. But I think Arnold bringing up the argument to begin with is good for the sport. Debate is good. He didn't do it in a disrespectful way.
Sure. And
I think that Phil is defending the establishment essentially in his interview, which is probably in his best interest, seeing that he's Mr. Olympia. But the comment about Arnold's legs, I truly believe Phil was being funny about it. I think he was making fun of Arnold's legs. I don't think it probably came off as disrespectful from Arnold's perspective, but I think Phil was just breaking balls and trying to inject a little humor into the situation.
Well, that's going to do for the debate portion of this show, but as promised, we have Dennis James on, and of course, to answer some of your questions. So we will go through the Muscle Central forum on rsmuscle.com and give Dennis some questions to answer. This one comes from Guru Hansa. Dennis, Guru Hansa wants you to talk about Baido Abaspor, and obviously he's been going through a tough time. He's going through some health issues right now, recovering. If he can compete again and get to his peak form, many say he's one of the best, obviously one of the elite in the 212 division. What do you think about his future prospects, assuming he gets in the kind of shape that he could get back on the stage?
Well, I've been working with Baido since last year, and we finally hit it right, around the Olympia, and then after the Olympia on the tour, he got even better. So, and I believe that, he qualified for the Olympia this year by placing top 4 last year at the Olympia, and I think that he even beat Flex Lewis in San Marino, which is, it's not a knock on Flex because it's a tour, everybody comes off their diet a little bit, so, but at this moment right now, he just got out the hospital. He has a sickness called vasculitis. Vasculitis, did I say that right?
I think so.
Yeah, and it's an inflammation of veins and arteries, and it attacks his immune system. And from his immune system, it goes all over his organs, and he's at that point where he couldn't eat. So he's down to 70 kilos, which is probably like 150-something pounds.
Oh, wow.
Just got out the hospital just now. He can't eat because it attacked his stomach. He eat 2 bites and he wants to puke. So, finally, after 24 days, he's out the hospital, lost 25 kilos, which is 50-something pounds, 60 pounds. And everything was looking so good for him this year. We wanted to go straight to the Olympia and do very well. And I believe that he had the potential to place in the top 3, and be a contender in the next couple of years. So now we have to see, because like I said, even his feet, he couldn't move his feet for a while, and his whole nerve system is kind of attacked by this whatever vasculitis disease, whatever it is. So he's home now, so we have to see how it goes. And I wish him all the best, and all these fans wish him all the best. I know that. And but I believe that he has the potential if he comes back, if everything works out like we hope it will. He will come back and he put that muscle back on. Like you all know how fast that can go. And then I think he'll be a contender in the 212 because they finally gave him the recognition. He finally nailed his condition, and I believe that he will be a great contender in the 212 in the future.
Dennis, the next question is about Big Ramy, and of course, when we announced that you're going to be on the show, so many of the questions were about Big Ramy, but I think this one is really the more encompassing one. Now, you obviously have expressed a lot of confidence in his ability to really dial in, and if he does, he's going to be a dominant force on the Olympia stage. What does he have to do, in your opinion, to get to that peak condition to the point where he can be that dominant bodybuilder that you and everybody envision?
Keep doing what he's doing right now. Don't think you have to blow up. You have to get bigger. You do not need to be any bigger. You know what I mean? Size is not everything. It's good to be the biggest guy on stage because that gives you plus points, but now you're not going to nail the condition. Just keep going, keep training, and just follow what he's been following the whole time. I mean, there's not much he can do. It comes with time. I mean, I don't think he has to change anything. It doesn't matter who he works with. He has the physique, he has the body. It will happen sooner or later anyways. But it doesn't matter if he works with Chris, if he works with George, if he works with me, if he works with Haney, if he works with Hojo, Mojo, John Doe, whoever. This guy has such great genetics and potential, and is such a one out of a billion that whatever he will do will kind of work. There's just shortcuts, and there's ways to get where it takes a little bit longer. We'll just have to see what path he will take.
Now, I hate these cross-generational comparisons, but we have a question now. We talked about Ronnie earlier in the show. Now, there have been talks about him coming back. Now, obviously, this question assumes in his peak condition, in his heyday. Could Ronnie beat Heath if both of them were in their peak condition on a stage together?
That's a funny question. Where did this question come from?
It came from from a user from our live chat box, or somebody who's watching live.
Because you know why? I'll tell you why this is a funny question. Because Kevin texted me.
Maybe he's asking it. Yeah.
Kevin texted me, it was like in November. It was right around, no, it was a little bit late. I saw him at the Europa here in Phoenix. And then he texted me, sometime after that, and he asked me the very same question. He said, DJ, if I come in at 100%, could I stand next to Phil? That's the question he texted me. And I said, Kevin is the one that made me want to do bodybuilding. So he's the one I saw, and I was like, that's who I want to be. I want to have these shoulders. That was my idol when it comes to bodybuilding. So, and I said, Kevin, and I'm looking at my idol back in the day. So I was like, Kevin, if you bring that 100%, I told him, absolutely. Then the next question right after that was, so if I come in 100%, can I win? Then I realized that he was serious, and I was like, Kevin, I said, and I wanted to put it nicely, so Kevin, I said, remember, man, you've been away from the sport for a long time, and you're not. He's my age. I think he must be 49 now too. Yeah, so I said, Kevin, I said, I mean, I didn't want to say, I don't think so, but I kind of want to say, Kevin, I mean, you sure that's what you want to do? And you know how Kevin is. Kevin has that, one time he went, yeah, man. Because at the end, he's like, I need your help.
He said the same thing to me.
Yeah, I said, Kevin, if you're 100% serious, come on, let's do this. You know what I mean? That's the last I heard. I haven't heard from him since.
The next question is from Phil Barrios on our live chat box. Now, Dennis, this is a question. This is a topic actually that we've talked about quite extensively on Heavy Muscle TV, on Iron Debate, and that is about adding another division on the men's side in the form of a classic division. Now, he points out the different divisions on the women's side and how that corresponds to, obviously, body shape. He also does mention that there are guys that have legs and want to pose and look like Frank Zane. What are your thoughts on, A, having another division on the men's side, and then, B, on a classic division on the men's side?
What was B?
Having a classic division for the men.
Come on. I mean, we all know that all this is a business when it comes to classes. And the men physique took off because this is what people want to see, because everybody from the outside looks at that like, oh, this is achievable. I can do this, you know. They look at us, they be like, oh, there's no way, you know. There's no way this is even possible without steroids. And now you're talking about a different class. What different class? If don't add a different class, take the damn shorts off and put some trunks on them and let them pose. You know what I mean? If that's what they want to do, that's what I would do. I wouldn't add another class. You're going to get confused. You know what I mean? I mean, it is bodybuilding, and now you go to physique. Now, if you add that classic bodybuilding that they have in Europe, they use it where they measure your height and then your weight minus 110 or whatever, and you have to be somewhere in that weight category. And then that's the same thing as the guys. They could basically compete twice a day. They compete in the classic now and compete in the physique right afterwards, or the other way around. So I would just take the shorts off and let them compete with trunks. Because some of the physique guys, really, most of them train legs, and they have a good set of legs too. You know, they're not as big as bodybuilders, but we already know that. So, you know, I would stop adding on these classes, you know, but unless you think about business, yeah. But if you think about the sport, I wouldn't confuse people too much.
Dennis, we got two questions about two competitors in two different men's divisions, one from the 212 and one obviously from the bodybuilding. In the 212, the question is whether or not, or rather your thoughts on Guy Cisternino, and if you think he can beat Flex in the 212 division this year.
Guy Cisternino, that just won the New York Pro, I think it was, the pictures, I don't really like the pictures, but I think it was the best guy that I've seen. And the pictures, I don't know, maybe it was different stage, different lighting. I mean, the pictures didn't really come out too well. And can he beat Flex? Guy wasn't even in the top 5 last year, so it's going to be very hard for him to come this year and beat the champ, because I think you're going to have to make it into the top group first.
What about Jose Raymond? Do you see him as a legitimate threat this year to dethrone Flex?
Absolutely, more so than Guy, because Jose is already there. He's already standing right next to him, or in 3rd place from last year. He came and won the Arnold, so now he is definitely a top contender. If Flex is off, I think Jose can beat him, but it's going to be very hard because Flex is a multi-Mr. Olympia 212 title holder, and if he comes in shape, you know, it's going to be very hard for anybody else to come in and dethrone him unless he makes a mistake and comes off and leaves the door open, let somebody else walk through there.
And this next question is about really, you know, we talked about Big Ramy and his prospects at the Olympia, and this question comes from Douglas Bodybuilding on our Instagram page. Seems as if the forgotten man is Sean Roden. Where do you see his prospects? I mean, we talk about Big Ramy's potential of dethroning Phil Heath and Kai Green. Where do you rate Sean Roden, who many say that if he comes in the same way he came in the 2014 at Mr. Olympia, that he could win it all this year?
Well, again, I got to be honest.
Keep it real.
Sean Roden, in my eyes, won the Olympia last year.
Okay.
Whoa.
Okay.
That's, in my eyes, the only person that was 100% last year was Sean. So the only person that I had no knock on, I mean, I couldn't find anything I didn't like, was Sean. So I'm not a judge, but for me personally, I thought that Sean deserved to win last year. Now, was he the biggest guy? No, but he was bigger than he was the year before, and in condition. So for this year, all Sean can do is be conditioned, you know. And I see Sean walking around at probably way heavier than he's ever been. I just hope that it's going to be good weight and it doesn't affect his shape, because his shape is what creates the illusion on stage, and his shape is what carries him and of course the condition that comes along with that, and that shows you how good Chris really is, because Sean Rhoden's been around for a long time.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And he's had this shape forever, but he never really, put it together. And since working with Chris, he comes in and he's all. I remember that the first show I saw him in Dallas at the Europa. It was crazy. It was unbelievable what you can do with the beautiful shape. And then, that condition, that's unbelievable. So let's put it this way. Kai outsizes him, Phil kind of outsizes him, but he's closer to Phil than to Kai when you look at the size. So now, all Sean can do is come in shape, and if he is 100%, he will place, again, in the top 3 or top 4, but if this guy's off ahead of him, then he should be able to walk through that door. If that's going to happen, I don't know. But in my eyes, he deserved the title last year.
Well, on that note, that is going to do it for this episode of Iron Debate. Dennis, great having you on in your RX Muscle debut. We thank you for setting aside some time from us. We'd love to have you again here or in Heavy Muscle TV. And again, thank you so much for joining us live from Phoenix, Arizona.
Thank you, guys, and hopefully, we'll have another chance to come. Maybe we have some more wars or something. Let's start a war. I'm all for the war. Let's go.
Guru Wars 2.
Guru Wars Part 2. Chris, can't thank you enough. Again, DJ mentioned the job that you've done with Sean, and of course, we thank you so much for all that you bring to this show as well. But next time, if you could be, I don't know, maybe in a living room, maybe like in a kitchen, not.
No, I don't have my microphone on my computer. I've got
Chris,
my iPad. Which
Chris, is it? I heard on the Facebook, the one true guru, George Farah, says he is now training your son. Is that true? He's taking him away from you.
He can bring up his legs. he told Arnold, if you train with me, I can bring your legs up.
And we'll close out Dave Palumbo. Dave, big week for you planned. You are about to make a 24-hour flight to Australia.
I'm going to train at DJ's gym out there. DJ, you still got that gym?
He's going 24 hours. What airline you on Dave Palumbo airline?
Yeah, I have my own plane. You didn't know that? It's called the Jumbo Jet.
Yeah, where you go in 24 hours? There's no way you take you 24 hours unless you go all over the world.
It's 5.5 hours to LA, and then you lay over in LA for 3.5 hours, and then it's 15 hours over there to.
Okay.
And then customs hold you there for 4 hours while they rip my bags apart every time I go.
I'm sorry, I forgot you coming in from New York, right?
Yeah,
right. You got a 5 hours to LA, but no. Where you going? You going to Melbourne?
I am going to Sydney, actually.
Oh, you going to Sydney? Are you coming to Melbourne at all?
No, but I understand your gym is there. I heard it's beautiful.
You want to come have a look at it, bro? It's only an hour flight from Sydney.
Yeah, I'll ride my bicycle there.
How long are you going to be there?
A week.
I don't know if I'll make it, but I'll be there. I'm just waiting for my visa now, and I'm out.
Yeah, they were giving me a hard time with my visa. I had to get a lot of documentation for these guys, because I'm doing a seminar there, and I wanted a business visa, and you would think that I was trying to steal the country away from them.
I know. I had 2 business visas the last 2, and this time I'm going for the long one, the 4 years. So that's why I have to wait.
Oh wow! Are you moving there?
No, but I'll be there a lot. Let's put it this way: I'm getting a house now when I get down there. So I'm.
DJ's got a house in like every country. Right? I mean, in every continent now. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I'll be Chris. I'll be seeing you this weekend because I'll be in Miami.
Actually,
I'm leaving tomorrow night.
Chris will be at the gay bars with the village people.
DJ.
On that note, we're going to wrap up things. We're going to be back next week, Heavy Muscle TV, Thursday night. Special thanks to our producer, Johnny Styles. Excellent job, as always. Keep it locked to rxmuscle.com. Have a good night.